The faint clink of silverware against porcelain echoed through the restaurant like tiny bells, each sound amplifying my solitude. I shifted in the plush velvet chair, feeling both out of place and invisible in this temple of luxury. The weight of exhaustion hung on my shoulders. A constant companion since becoming both mother and father to my 4-year-old daughter, Lily. "More water, ma'am?" The server's voice startled me from my thoughts, his crisp black uniform a stark contrast to my simple dress bought on clearance 3 seasons ago. "Yes, thank you." My voice came out smaller than intended, as if the opulence of the place had stolen my volume along with my confidence. I shouldn't have been there. The obsidian was far beyond my budget, a cathedral of crystal chandeliers and marble floors where the wealthy came to worship at the altar of exclusivity. But today was my 30th birthday, and after dropping Lily at my neighbor's for a rare overnight stay, I'd made a reckless decision to treat myself to one decent meal. Just one night where I wasn't eating dinosaur-shaped nuggets or mac and cheese from a box. The restaurant hummed with quiet conversation and the occasional burst of practiced laughter. I kept my eyes fixed on the menu, each price making my stomach twist. I'd saved for months for this indulgence, tucking away spare dollars from my paychecks at the hospital where I worked as a nurse's assistant. "The salmon is excellent tonight," the server suggested, noticing my hesitation. I nodded gratefully, closing the leather-bound menu. "The salmon, then." As I waited, I allowed myself to absorb the atmosphere. The heavy scent of expensive perfumes, mingling with aromas from the kitchen, the soft jazz playing from hidden speakers, the warmth from candles casting everyone in a flattering glow. For a moment, I could pretend I belonged. The stillness shifted suddenly. Like animals sensing a predator, the other diners subtly straightened, conversations falling to whispers. The air itself seemed to change, charged with an electric current of deference and fear. I didn't immediately notice him. Instead, I felt him first, a presence that altered the gravity of the room. My eyes lifted just as he moved past my table, a tall figure in a perfectly tailored suit that made the expensive clothes of other patrons look like department store bargains. Dark hair, cut precisely, framed features that seemed sculpted rather than grown, sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, and eyes the color of aged whiskey. He was flanked by 2 men whose stiff postures and scanning gazes marked them as security rather than companions. One whispered something in his ear, causing those intense eyes to flick directly to my table. I looked away instantly, heart hammering against my ribs. Something primal warned me not to be caught staring at this man. I pretended to be fascinated by the pattern on my napkin, while feeling the weight of his gaze settle on me like a physical touch. "Who is she?" I heard him ask, voice low, but carrying in the suddenly hushed restaurant. I didn't catch the response, but I felt the atmosphere shift again as he continued toward a private area at the back of the restaurant. Only then did I release the breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "You've caught his attention," my server murmured, as he returned with my water, his professionally neutral expression betrayed by the tension around his eyes. That was Mr. Castillo. The name should have meant nothing to me, but a shiver traced my spine nonetheless. There was something in the way the server said it, a reverence tinged with fear, that told me this wasn't just any wealthy businessman. My salmon arrived, beautifully plated but now tasting like ashes in my mouth, as I felt occasional glances from the private section burning into my back. I ate mechanically, regretting my decision to come here, wishing I'd chosen the anonymous diner instead. This birthday treat had transformed into an ordeal to be endured. I was nearly finished when the server returned, this time with a glass of dark red wine I hadn't ordered. "Compliments of Mr. Castillo," he said, placing it beside my plate. I didn't order this," I stammered, panic rising in my throat, "and I can't accept. It would be impolite to refuse." The server interrupted softly, his expression conveying what his words didn't. This wasn't a suggestion. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for the glass, taking the smallest sip possible. The wine was rich and complex, probably costing more than my weekly grocery budget. I set it down quickly, determined to finish my meal and leave as soon as possible. When I asked for the check, the server shook his head. "Your meal has been taken care of, Ms. Harper," I supplied automatically before I could stop myself. "Emma Harper. But I can't accept. Mr. Castillo insists." Again, that tone that brooked no argument. I nodded, gathering my worn purse and cardigan. As I stood, I made the mistake of glancing toward the private section. Through a gap in the privacy screens, those whiskey-colored eyes caught mine. Mr. Castillo raised his glass slightly in acknowledgement, his expression unreadable but intense. Something in that gaze made me feel simultaneously seen and hunted. I hurried out, the cool night air a relief after the stifling atmosphere inside. My ancient Honda sat like an eyesore among the gleaming luxury vehicles in the parking lot. As I fumbled for my keys, a sleek black car pulled up beside me, the window lowering to reveal one of Mr. Castillo's security men. Ms. Harper, he said, my name in his mouth sending another chill through me. Mr. Castillo would like to ensure you get home safely. Allow us to escort you. That's really not necessary, I said, backing away slightly. I only live 15 minutes from here. It wasn't a request. His tone remained polite, but the underlying steel was unmistakable. Before I could protest further, the back door opened, and there he was, Alexander Castillo, regarding me with those intense eyes that seemed to strip away my defenses. Please, join me, he said, his voice deep and smooth like the wine he'd sent to my table. I insist. In that moment, I made what would prove to be the most consequential mistake of my life. Instead of running, instead of screaming, instead of causing the scene that might have saved me from what was to come, I slipped into the back seat beside him. The door closed with a soft click that sounded to my ears like a cage snapping shut. Emma Harper, he said, my name on his lips somehow sounding like both a caress and a claim. Tell me, what brings a woman like you to my restaurant? Alone? On a Tuesday night? It's my birthday, I admitted, the words escaping before I could consider them. Something flickered in his eyes, interest, perhaps, or calculation. A birthday should never be celebrated alone. He studied me, gaze lingering on my hands, my face, my simple clothes. You have a child. It wasn't a question. I glanced down at my purse, where a small unicorn keychain, Lily's gift to me this morning, hung from the zipper. A daughter, I confirmed reluctantly. She's 4. And her father? The bluntness of the question startled me. Not in the picture. He nodded, as if confirming something to himself. Address? He asked, and when I hesitated, added, so we can take you home, Emma. The way he said my name, so familiar, so possessive already, should have warned me. But exhaustion and the lingering effects of the wine clouded my judgment. I gave him my address, watching as he relayed it to the driver with a quiet command. As the car glided through the night streets, I realized with growing unease that Alexander Castillo hadn't stopped looking at me, his gaze a physical weight I couldn't shake. In the confined space of the car, I caught his scent, expensive cologne with undertones of something darker, something dangerous. Why did you pay for my meal? I finally asked, needing to break the charged silence. A smile curved his lips, not quite reaching those predatory eyes. Let's call it a birthday gift. From a complete stranger, I countered, finding a spark of courage. We're hardly strangers now, Emma, he replied. I know your name, where you live, that you have a daughter, and that you were dining alone on your birthday in a restaurant where you clearly felt out of place. He leaned slightly closer. I find I want to know more. The car stopped outside my apartment building, a modest complex that looked even shabbier through the tinted windows of his luxury vehicle. Thank you for the ride, I said stiffly, reaching for the door handle. His hand caught mine, warm and strong, the touch sending an involuntary shiver through me. One more thing, he said, producing a business card seemingly from nowhere. When you need anything, anything at all, call this number. I took the card automatically, the heavy cardstock embossed with just a phone number, no name. Why would I need anything from you? I asked, finding another flicker of defiance. Alexander Castillo smiled again, this time showing a flash of perfect white teeth that reminded me of a predator's warning. Because, Emma Harper, he said, releasing my hand, but somehow making me feel more captured than before. Everyone eventually needs something from someone like me. I escaped the car, clutching my purse and the business card, feeling his eyes on my back until I disappeared into my building. Only when I was safely inside my apartment door locked and chained. Did I allow myself to breathe? On my refrigerator, Lily's crayon drawing smiled at me, a stick figure of her and me, holding hands beneath a bright yellow sun. Normal, safe, my world. I looked down at the business card in my trembling hand, suddenly certain that my world had just tilted irrevocably on its axis. What I couldn't have known then, as I slipped the card into my wallet instead of tearing it to pieces as I should have, was that Alexander Castillo had already decided I belonged to him, and men like Alexander Castillo always took what they wanted. 3 days passed in blissful normality. I worked my shifts at St. Mary's Hospital, picked Lily up from preschool, and tried to convince myself that the encounter with Alexander Castillo had been nothing more than an unsettling birthday adventure, a story I might someday tell with a nervous laugh. The business card remained in my wallet, untouched but not forgotten. Sometimes during quiet moments, I found myself running my finger over the embossed number, wondering what would happen if I called. I never did. On Thursday afternoon, I was helping Lily build a castle out of mismatched blocks when someone knocked on our apartment door. Unexpected visitors were rare in our quiet life. "Stay here, sweetie," I told Lily, my heart inexplicably racing as I approached the door. Through the peephole, I saw a delivery man holding an elaborate arrangement of white roses. Frowning, I opened the door a crack, security chain still in place. "Emma Harper?" he asked, consulting his clipboard. "Yes?" "Delivery for you." I unlatched the chain and accepted the flowers. At least 24 pristine roses nestled among fragrant greenery, wrapped in heavy cream paper tied with a silk ribbon. The delivery man nodded and left without waiting for a tip, which was fortunate since I had none to give. "Pretty," Lily exclaimed, abandoning her blocks to examine the flowers. "Is it your birthday again?" "No, sweetie." I searched for a card among the blooms and found a small envelope. Inside was a heavy cardstock note with only 3 words in elegant script. "Happy belated birthday." No signature. But I didn't need one. The knot in my stomach tightened as I realized Alexander Castillo knew where I lived, not just my building, but my specific apartment. The roses suddenly seemed less like a gift and more like a message. "I can reach you whenever I want." That night, after tucking Lily into bed, I searched Alexander Castillo's name online. What I found sent chills crawling up my spine. The official articles described him as a successful entrepreneur, with interests in real estate, import and export businesses, and several high-end restaurants, including the Obsidian. But between the lines of respectability ran darker threads, investigations that mysteriously ended, competitors who disappeared, and whispered associations with organized crime. Alexander Castillo wasn't just wealthy, he was dangerous. And for some unfathomable reason, he had fixed his attention on me. The next morning, I dropped Lily at preschool and hurried to work, hyper-aware of my surroundings. Every black car made my pulse quicken. Every suited man became a potential threat. I was jumping at shadows, but the shadows seemed to be watching back. "You okay, Emma?" asked Diane, the head nurse, as I fumbled a stack of patient charts. "You seem distracted today." "Just tired," I lied, forcing a smile. "Lily had nightmares last night," Diane nodded sympathetically. "Single parenting is tough." "Hey, if you need an extra shift next week, we're short-staffed on Tuesday." "I'll take it," I said quickly, mentally calculating how the additional hours would help with next month's rent. Since Lily's father had vanished 2 years ago, taking my savings and leaving nothing but debt, I'd been perpetually treading financial water. As my shift ended, I headed to the staff locker room to change out of my scrubs. The room was empty except for me, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead as I pulled on my jeans and sweater. When I closed my locker, I nearly screamed at the reflection in the small mirror, a man standing behind me, one of Alexander Castillo's security guards, the same one who had spoken to me outside the restaurant. "Jesus," I gasped, spinning around. "How did you get in here? This is staff only." His expression remained impassive. "Mr. Castillo would like to see you." Fear and indignation warred within me. "I'm picking up my daughter in 20 minutes. Arrangements have been made. Your neighbor, Mrs. Chen, will watch her until later this evening." Ice flooded my veins. "You spoke to Mrs. Chen? How do you even know?" "Mr. Castillo is a thorough man. he interrupted, as if this explained everything. The car is waiting. I thought about screaming, about running to security, about calling the police, but something in the man's calm certainty told me none of those options would end well. Alexander Castillo had tentacles everywhere, it seemed. What does he want? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. That's between you and him. He gestured toward the door. Shall we? The same sleek black car waited in the staff parking lot. This time, Alexander wasn't inside. Instead, I rode alone in the back, while the security guard sat with the driver, the privacy glass raised between us. We drove for nearly 30 minutes, leaving the familiar parts of the city behind until we reached an exclusive waterfront neighborhood, where mansions stood behind high gates and private security. The car pulled up to an imposing estate protected by a stone wall and wrought iron gates that opened silently at our approach. The house itself was a modernist statement of glass, stone, and clean lines, perched on a cliff overlooking the water. Beautiful, but fortress-like. I was escorted inside through a cavernous foyer with marble floors and art pieces that belonged in museums. The security guard led me through the house to a terrace overlooking the ocean, where Alexander Castillo sat reviewing documents at a glass table. He looked up as I approached, those whiskey-colored eyes warming with something that made my stomach tighten. He wore casual clothes today, if a shirt that probably cost more than my monthly rent could be considered casual. The sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms lightly dusted with dark hair. Emma, he said, standing and dismissing the security guard with a slight nod. Thank you for coming. Did I have a choice? The words slipped out before I could stop them. A smile played at the corners of his mouth. There are always choices, but I'm glad you made this one. He gestured to the chair across from him. Please, sit. Would you like something to drink? Water? Wine? Coffee? Water, I said, reluctantly taking the offered seat. The ocean view was breathtaking, the late afternoon sun casting golden light across the waves. He poured water from a crystal pitcher himself, rather than summoning staff, a small gesture that nonetheless felt significant. His movements were precise and controlled, like everything about him. You're upset about the flowers, he said, setting the water glass before me. Not a question. I'm upset that you know where I live, that you contacted my neighbor, that you're interfering with my life, I replied, finding courage in anger. I don't know what you want from me. Alexander studied me with those penetrating eyes. What I want is simple, Emma. Your company. My company, I repeated flatly. You could have anyone. Models, actresses, socialites. Why are you fixated on a single mother who can barely afford to eat at your restaurant? He leaned forward slightly, his gaze never leaving mine, because when I saw you sitting alone in that restaurant, so clearly out of place, yet holding yourself with such quiet dignity, I saw something rare, authenticity. Do you know how unusual that is in my world? I took a sip of water, using the moment to collect my thoughts. So I'm a novelty. A curiosity. You're a mystery I find myself wanting to solve. His voice dropped lower, more intimate. Tell me about yourself, Emma Harper. There's nothing to tell. I work at St. Mary's Hospital. I raise my daughter. I try to make ends meet. And Lily's father? The question hit a tender spot. Gone. He cleaned out our savings and disappeared when Lily was 2. I later found out he had gambling debts. Something darkened in Alexander's eyes. His name? Why does it matter? I hesitated, then relented. Marcus Denton. Alexander nodded almost imperceptibly, as if filing the information away. The casual way he asked, the intensity of his interest, it unsettled me deeply. What do you actually want from me, Mr. Castillo? Alexander, he corrected gently. And I told you, your company, dinner perhaps, conversation. Nothing more complicated than that. Nothing was ever that simple, especially with men like him. And if I say no? He sat back, regarding me calmly. Then Raymond will drive you home, and you'll never hear from me again. The offer of freedom should have been a relief. Instead, it felt like a test, one whose rules I didn't understand. Just like that. I don't force my company on unwilling women, Emma. His tone carried a hint of offense. Yet here I was, brought to his home without my explicit consent. The contradiction hung in the air between us. One dinner. I found myself saying, though a wiser part of me screamed to take the escape offered. And then you'll leave me alone if that's what I want? A smile spread across his face. Genuine this time, transforming his severe features into something devastatingly handsome. One dinner. You have my word. As if on cue, a staff member appeared from inside the house. Dinner is ready to be served when you are, sir. I blinked in surprise. You already had dinner planned? You were that confident? Alexander stood, offering his hand to help me up. I'm always prepared for multiple outcomes. Shall we? I ignored his hand, rising on my own, unwilling to touch him just yet. He accepted this small rebellion with grace, leading me to an intimate dining room with windows overlooking the darkening ocean and a table set for two with fine china and crystal. The meal was exquisite, course after course of perfectly prepared dishes paired with wines I couldn't begin to identify. Throughout dinner, Alexander asked questions about my life, listening with unexpected interest to my mundane stories about hospital work and raising Lily. He revealed little about himself in return, deflecting personal questions with practiced ease. You know everything about me, and I know almost nothing about you, I observed as dessert was served. A delicate chocolate creation that probably contained more calories than I usually consumed in a day. What would you like to know? He asked, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. What do you really do? I ventured boldly. Beyond the restaurants and businesses mentioned in articles, his eyes gleamed with something like approval. I solve problems for people who can't solve them through conventional channels. I provide protection, arbitration, and certain specialized services. You're in the Mafia, I translated bluntly. He didn't flinch. That's an outdated term. I prefer to think of myself as operating within the gray areas of society. Areas that exist whether people acknowledge them or not. Is that supposed to make me feel better about sitting across from you? No, he said simply. It's meant to answer your question honestly. I respect you too much to lie. The statement caught me off guard. Respect wasn't what I expected from a man like him. After dinner, Alexander led me to a sitting room where a fire crackled in a stone hearth despite the mild evening. It's getting late, he said. Raymond can drive you home now, or... He paused, studying my face. You seem exhausted, Emma. I have several guest rooms. You're welcome to stay the night and return home refreshed in the morning. Alarm bells rang in my head. My daughter is being well cared for by Mrs. Chen, who I've arranged to compensate generously for her time. He finished smoothly. I've also taken the liberty of having some clothes delivered for you, should you choose to stay. The casual display of power, arranging my life, my child care, even my clothing, should have terrified me. Instead, I felt a confusing mixture of indignation and relief. For years, I'd carried every burden alone, made every decision, solved every problem. Having someone simply handle things was both intrusive and oddly freeing. Why are you doing all this? I asked, genuinely bewildered. What could you possibly want from me that's worth this effort? Alexander moved closer, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. Perhaps I'm tired of people who want things from me. My money, my power, my protection. Perhaps I find it refreshing to be with someone who wants nothing. I do want something, I corrected him. I want you to leave me and my daughter alone after tonight. A shadow crossed his face. Is that truly what you want, Emma? The question hung in the air between us, heavier than it should have been. In the firelight, his eyes seemed to glow with an intensity that made my breath catch. I want to go home, I said finally, my voice barely audible. Something that might have been disappointment flickered across his features, before his expression smoothed into polite acceptance. Of course. Raymond will take you. As we walked toward the foyer, Alexander's phone rang. He checked the screen, his jaw tightening. Excuse me for a moment. This is important. He stepped away to take the call, his voice too low for me to hear. When he returned, his expression had hardened, all traces of the charming dinner companion gone. There's been a development, he said, his tone clipped. It concerns your daughter's father. My blood froze in my veins. Marcus? What about him? Alexander's eyes held mine, unreadable and dark. He's back in the city, and he's looking for you. That's impossible. The words came out as a whisper, my legs suddenly unsteady beneath me. Marcus disappeared 2 years ago. Alexander guided me to a nearby chair, his hand at my elbow, both supportive and possessive. He returned 3 days ago. My sources inform me he's accumulated even more significant debts than before. Your sources? I stared up at him, pieces clicking into horrible place. You've been investigating me, my past, my life. He didn't deny it. I make it a point to know everything about people who interest me. A chill ran through me despite the warmth of the room. How would Marcus even know where to find us? We moved after he left. I changed my phone number, my email, everything. Alexander's expression darkened. People like Marcus have ways of finding what they're looking for when motivated enough. And it seems he's very motivated. By what? He took everything when he left. My voice cracked on the last word. Memories surfacing of those devastating days. Discovering our joint account emptied, credit cards maxed out, even Lily's small college fund gone. Alexander crouched before me, bringing his face level with mine, those intense eyes capturing my gaze. Emma, I need you to listen carefully. Men with gambling debts as severe as his don't simply want money. They're desperate, and desperate men are dangerous. Fear clawed at my throat as I thought of Lily. Her innocent smile, her complete trust in me to keep her safe. What does he want from us? According to my information, he believes you have something of value. That's ridiculous. Everything of value went with him. Alexander's expression remained grave. Not everything. He's been telling his creditors about an inheritance. Confusion replaced some of my fear. Inheritance? My parents left me nothing but medical debt when they died. Your grandmother's jewelry, Alexander said quietly. The pieces you keep in the small wooden box on your closet shelf. I recoiled, genuinely frightened now by how much he knew about my private life. How could you possibly? As I said, I'm thorough. He rose and moved to pour 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. The point is, Marcus has convinced some very unpleasant people that these pieces are worth a substantial amount. They're not, I said, accepting the glass he offered, more for something to hold than any desire to drink. Just sentimental pieces, a few gold necklaces, some rings with small stones, nothing valuable. Alexander gave me a look that contained something like pity. Value is relative, Emma, to collectors of certain vintage pieces. They might be worth more than you realize, but that's irrelevant. What matters is that Marcus has promised these items as payment, and the people he owes aren't known for their patience or understanding when promises are broken. The implications hit me like a physical blow. You think he'll come after us, after Lily? I know he will. Alexander's certainty chilled me more than any speculation could have. In fact, he's already been watching your apartment building. My men noticed him yesterday. The glass nearly slipped from my fingers. Yesterday? And you didn't think to warn me? My daughter was there, alone with a babysitter while I worked a double shift. You were never in immediate danger, he said, his tone suddenly cold and authoritative. I've had people monitoring your apartment since the night we met. The revelation should have comforted me. Instead, it intensified my alarm. You've been watching us? For days? Protecting you, he corrected, as if the distinction was crucial. My mind raced through the implications. Alexander Castillo, a man who operated in the gray areas, as he put it, had been having me and my daughter watched. The same man who had somehow discovered intimate details about my life, my past, even the contents of my closet. The same man who had effectively forced me to have dinner with him tonight. And yet, the same man who was now warning me about a very real threat to my daughter's safety. I need to go home. Now. I set down the untouched drink and stood. I need to get Lily, and I stopped, realizing I had nowhere to go, no safe haven, no resources to protect us. Alexander watched the realization dawn on my face. Stay here tonight, he said, his voice gentler now. Both of you. I'll send Raymond to collect Lily and Mrs. Chen. They'll be here within the hour. In your home? With you? The idea seemed both outrageous and, in light of what he'd just told me, grimly sensible. This house has state-of-the-art security, and my most trusted men guarding it. No one enters without my explicit permission. He moved closer, not touching me, but enveloping me in his presence nonetheless. Emma, whatever you may think of me, whatever reservations you have, and they're valid, I can keep you safe, both of you. The sincerity in his voice was compelling. Or perhaps it was simply that I had no better options. Just for tonight, I conceded, hating how quickly I'd gone from defiance to dependence. And tomorrow we figure out a more permanent solution. Something flickered in his eyes, satisfaction perhaps, but it was gone too quickly to identify. Of course, I'll make the arrangements. Within the hour, Lily arrived, sleepy-eyed and confused in her pink pajamas, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit, Mrs. Chen had packed a small overnight bag with Lily's essentials. "Mama, this house is like a castle," Lily whispered when I scooped her into my arms, her eyes wide as she took in the grand foyer. "Are we on vacation?" "Something like that, sweetheart," I murmured, breathing in her familiar scent of baby shampoo and the faint sweetness that was uniquely hers. "Just for tonight." Alexander appeared at the top of the sweeping staircase, having changed into more casual clothes, though still impossibly elegant. He descended slowly, his eyes fixed on Lily with an expression I couldn't decipher. "You must be Lily," he said when he reached us, his deep voice softening as he crouched to her eye level. "I'm Alexander. This is my home." Lily regarded him solemnly, still clutching her rabbit. "Do you have a swimming pool? Castles always have swimming pools in my books." A genuine smile transformed Alexander's face, making him look younger, almost boyish. "I do, in fact. Perhaps tomorrow your mother will let you see it." "We won't be imposing that long," I interjected quickly. Alexander straightened, that unreadable expression returning. "Let me show you to your rooms. I've had the staff prepare the blue suite. It has connecting bedrooms, so Lily can be close to you." The blue suite proved to be larger than our entire apartment, with a sitting area, 2 bedrooms, and a bathroom that featured a shower big enough for 4 people and a tub that resembled a small pool. Everything was decorated in soothing shades of blue and cream, elegant, but somehow still welcoming. "This is beautiful," I admitted, as Lily explored the rooms with delighted gasps and exclamations. "It's yours for as long as you need it," Alexander said, leaning against the doorframe, watching Lily with that same curious expression. "Is there anything else you require tonight?" I shook my head, suddenly overwhelmed by the day's events. "No, this is more than enough," he nodded, his gaze returning to me. "There are clothes for both of you in the dressers." I had my assistant make some educated guesses about sizes. The thought of him selecting clothing for us, or more likely, instructing some employee to do so, made me deeply uncomfortable, but I was too exhausted to protest. "Thank you. Sleep well, Emma," he said, lingering a moment longer than necessary before turning to leave. At the door, he paused. "My bedroom is at the end of this hallway, should you need anything during the night." His eyes held mine meaningfully. "Anything at all." After he left, I helped Lily brush her teeth and tucked her into the child-sized bed in the connecting room, which someone had thoughtfully prepared with fresh linens decorated with cartoon characters. She fell asleep almost instantly, the day's excitement having worn her out. I took a long shower, letting the hot water wash away some of my stress, before slipping into a silk nightgown I found in the dresser, exactly my size, as promised. The garment was modest enough, but the quality and feel of it against my skin made me acutely aware that it probably cost more than I made in a day. Sleep evaded me despite my exhaustion. I kept replaying Alexander's warnings about Marcus, imagining worst-case scenarios, feeling the walls of some invisible cage closing around me. After tossing for an hour, I slipped out of bed and padded to the sitting area, hoping to clear my mind. Through the windows, moonlight spilled across a landscaped garden and reflected off the dark ocean beyond. The view was breathtaking, but it only emphasized how far I was from my normal life, how quickly everything had changed. A soft knock at the outer door startled me. When I opened it, Alexander stood there, still fully dressed despite the late hour. "I saw the light," he explained, nodding toward the lamp I'd switched on. "May I come in? There are developments we should discuss." I glanced back toward Lily's room, confirming her door was closed, then reluctantly stepped aside. Alexander entered, his presence immediately filling the space in a way that made it hard to breathe. His eyes swept over me in the nightgown, before returning to my face with a heat that made my cheeks warm. "Developments?" I prompted, crossing my arms over my chest. He moved to the small bar in the corner, pouring himself a drink. "Marcus made contact with his creditors this evening. He's promised delivery of the items by tomorrow night." My stomach dropped. "He doesn't have them. He can't get into my apartment." "No, but he's desperate enough to try." Alexander sipped his drink, watching me over the rim of the glass. "Which means we need to consider your options beyond tonight." "We?" The word slipped out more sharply than I intended. His eyes narrowed slightly. "Yes, Emma. We. Because whether you like it or not, your problems and mine have become intertwined." "How exactly are my problems yours?" I challenged, finding a spark of defiance despite my vulnerability, standing before him in borrowed silk in his home. Alexander set down his glass and moved closer, his movement deliberately slow, as if approaching a frightened animal. "The moment I noticed you in my restaurant, the moment I decided to learn your name, to seek your company, that was the moment your safety became my concern." He stopped just short of touching me. "And I protect what's mine. I'm not yours," I whispered, even as something deep inside me responded to his possessive tone. "Aren't you?" His voice dropped lower, intimate, in the quiet room. "You're in my home, wearing clothes I provided, sleeping under my protection. Your daughter is safe because I made it so." The truth of his words stung. In less than a week, I had become dependent on him in ways I couldn't have imagined. The independent life I'd built since Marcus left suddenly seemed fragile, an illusion of security that had shattered at the first real threat. "What are my options then?" I asked, hating the tremor in my voice. "Stay here," he said immediately. "Not just tonight, but until the situation with Marcus is permanently resolved." The implication in permanently resolved sent a chill through me. "And how long would that be?" "As long as necessary." He reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from my face with surprising gentleness. "I have a proposal, Emma, one that would solve your immediate problems and potentially offer a more lasting arrangement." I stepped back from his touch. "What kind of proposal?" "A position has recently opened in my household staff, a live-in role, overseeing certain domestic operations. The previous employee has retired after many years of service." I stared at him in disbelief. "You want me to be your housekeeper?" A smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Not exactly. The role is more of a household manager, overseeing staff schedules, managing social calendars, ensuring the smooth operation of this and my other properties. It comes with a generous salary, private accommodations for you and Lily, and all living expenses covered. Lily would have access to the best schools, the best opportunities." The offer was both tempting and terrifying. "And what would you expect in return for this generosity?" His eyes darkened. "Your presence, your loyalty." He moved closer again, this time not stopping until bare inches separated us. "I find I enjoy having you near, Emma. The rest would develop naturally if you were amenable." The implication was clear. This wasn't just a job offer, it was something far more complicated and dangerous. An arrangement where the lines between employee and something else would inevitably blur. "And if I say no, then I'll still ensure your safety until the Marcus situation is resolved. I'll help you find suitable accommodations elsewhere, perhaps in another city where he can't find you. I'll make sure you and Lily are financially secure." His expression remained impassive. "I told you before, I don't force my company on unwilling women." Yet the power imbalance between us made any notion of choice seem almost laughable. He held all the cards, the resources, the information, the protection Lily and I desperately needed. "I need time," I said finally. "To think." He nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression. It wasn't a rejection, and he knew it. "Of course. Take all the time you need." As he turned to leave, a sudden thought occurred to me. "Alexander," I called after him, the first time I'd used his first name voluntarily. "How did you know about my grandmother's jewelry?" "Really?" He paused at the door, considering me for a long moment. "When I became interested in you, I had your apartment thoroughly searched. Standard procedure when I'm considering bringing someone into my life." The casual admission of such a profound violation left me speechless. Rest well, Emma, he said, closing the door behind him, leaving me alone with the uncomfortable knowledge that my life had already been changed beyond recognition, and that some part of me, some traitorous, previously unknown part, didn't entirely mind. I returned to bed where sleep continued to elude me. In the connecting room, Lily slept peacefully, unaware of the dangerous currents swirling around us, currents that seemed increasingly likely to sweep us into Alexander Castillo's world permanently. Morning arrived with disorienting brightness. For a moment, lying in the luxurious bed, I couldn't remember where I was. Then reality came flooding back. Alexander Castillo, Marcus's return, the proposal that had kept me awake most of the night. Lily's excited voice drifted from the connecting room. Following the sound, I found her sitting cross-legged on her bed, chatting animatedly with a woman in a crisp uniform who was arranging a breakfast tray. "Mama, look, pancakes shaped like bunnies," Lily exclaimed, pointing to the elaborately presented breakfast. The staff member straightened, offering me a polite smile. "Good morning, Ms. Harper. Mr. Castillo asked that breakfast be served in your suite. He thought Miss Lily might enjoy it." "Thank you," I managed, still trying to process the strangeness of waking up to servants and bunny-shaped pancakes. "Is Mr. Castillo around?" "He left early for business, but asked me to inform you that he'll return by noon. He also requested that you and Miss Lily remain on the property today." Her expression remained professionally neutral, but I detected a hint of curiosity in her eyes. Clearly, our presence was unusual enough to spark interest among the staff. After she left, Lily and I shared the extravagant breakfast. I tried to maintain a sense of normalcy, smiling at her excitement over the pancakes and fresh fruit, but my mind kept returning to Alexander's proposal and the looming threat of Marcus. "Can we see the swimming pool today?" Lily asked, her face sticky with syrup. "Maybe," I hedged, helping her clean up. "First, let's explore inside, and you need a bath, little miss." After bathing Lily and dressing us both in the clothes provided, simple but expensive items that fit us perfectly, we ventured out of the suite. A security guard stationed at the end of the hallway nodded respectfully, but made no move to stop us as we wandered through the sprawling house. The place was a labyrinth of elegant rooms, each more impressive than the last. Lily was enchanted, especially by the library with its floor-to-ceiling shelves and rolling ladder. We spent an hour there, reading from a collection of children's books that seemed suspiciously new, as if they'd been purchased specifically for her visit. Around 11, we discovered the indoor pool, a magnificent space with a glass ceiling that bathed the water in natural light. Lily pressed her face against the glass doors, her expression pleading. "Please, Mama, just for a little while?" I hesitated, but the hopeful look in her eyes won me over. "All right, but we don't have swimsuits." "Actually, you do." The voice came from behind us, making me jump. Alexander stood there, earlier than expected, watching us with that now familiar intensity. He'd changed from the business attire he must have worn for his morning meetings into more casual clothes, though still impeccably tailored. "I had swimwear added to your wardrobes this morning," he continued, stepping closer. "Good morning, Lily." My daughter, usually shy around strangers, beamed at him. "Hi, Mr. Alexander. Can I really swim in your pool?" "Of course." He crouched to her level, his expression softening in a way I'd only seen when he addressed her. "It's heated, too. Very comfortable." "Thank you." Lily bounced on her toes, then looked up at me. "Can we, Mama, please?" I felt trapped between my daughter's excitement and my discomfort, with accepting yet another offering from this man. "I suppose for a little while." "Excellent," Alexander said, rising. "The changing rooms are through there. Everything you need should be inside." He turned to me, his voice dropping slightly. "Perhaps afterward we could continue our conversation from last night while Lily rests." The reminder of his proposal sent a flutter of anxiety through me, but I nodded. "We should talk, yes." While Lily splashed happily in the shallow end of the pool, I sat at the edge with my feet in the water, watching Alexander swim powerful laps. His body was lean, but muscled, marked with several scars that hinted at a violent past. When he finally pulled himself out of the water and sat beside me, droplets running down his chest, I found myself looking away, uncomfortable with my own awareness of him. "She's a wonderful child," he observed, watching Lily play with the floating toys that had magically appeared poolside. Bright, spirited. She's everything to me, I said simply. Alexander was quiet for a moment. I never had siblings. My mother died when I was young, and my father... He trailed off, his expression hardening. My father was not a family man. It was the first truly personal detail he'd shared. I'm sorry. He shrugged, the casual gesture at odds with the tension in his shoulders. It shaped me, made me value certain things. His eyes returned to Lily. Family loyalty, protection. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression darkening. We need to talk, now. Alarmed by his sudden shift in tone, I called Lily out of the pool. A female staff member appeared as if summoned, offering to help Lily change and have some lunch while the adults talked. Once Lily was settled with lunch and cartoons in our suite, Alexander led me to his office. A sleek space dominated by a desk facing floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. He didn't sit, but paced behind the desk, his earlier relaxed demeanor completely gone. Marcus has escalated the situation, he said without preamble. He attempted to break into your apartment early this morning. When he couldn't get in, he vandalized the door and threatened your neighbor who came to investigate the noise. Horror washed through me. Is Mrs. Patel all right? Shaken but unharmed, my people intervened before anything serious happened. He stopped pacing, fixing me with an intense look. Emma, this changes the timeline. He's growing desperate, which makes him unpredictable. I sank into a chair, trying to process this new development. What does that mean for us? For Lily? Alexander moved around the desk, kneeling before me and taking my hands in his. The gesture was so unexpected, so intimate, that I didn't pull away. It means you need to make a decision, he said, his voice gentler than I'd ever heard it. Stay here, where I can guarantee your safety, or let me arrange for you to disappear. New identities, new location, completely off the grid. The options spun in my head. Disappearing meant leaving everything behind. My job, the few friends I had, the life I'd built for Lily. Staying meant binding our future to Alexander Castillo, a man who operated in shadows, who had invaded my privacy, who clearly saw me as something to possess. If we stay, I said slowly, what exactly would that mean, in practical terms? His thumbs traced circles on my palms, the touch distracting. You would accept the position we discussed. Lily would have a home here, with access to private tutors, the best education. You would have financial security, protection. His eyes held mine. And you would have me. As what? I whispered, needing clarity even as I feared the answer. Initially, as your employer. Over time, perhaps as something more, if that's what you wanted. He released one of my hands to brush his fingers against my cheek. I'm attracted to you, Emma. More than attracted. But I meant what I said. I won't force anything. The sincerity in his voice was compelling, as was the warmth of his touch. For a woman who had been alone for so long, shouldering every burden by myself, the promise of protection, of having someone powerful on my side, was almost irresistible. And Marcus? I asked, my voice barely audible. Alexander's expression hardened. Leave Marcus to me. The implication hung heavy in the air. I should have been horrified, should have run as far from this man as possible. Instead, I found myself nodding slowly. We'll stay, I said, the words feeling momentous as they left my mouth. At least until the situation with Marcus is resolved. After that, we'll see. Satisfaction gleamed in Alexander's eyes. He raised my hands to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles that sent an unexpected shiver through me. A wise decision. He rose, returning to business mode so quickly I felt dizzy from the transition. I'll have your things brought from the apartment today. Is there anything specific Lily needs that might not be obvious? I listed a few of Lily's favorite toys and books, still trying to process the choice I'd just made. Had I sold my soul for security? Or was I simply making the best decision for my daughter in an impossible situation? There's one more thing, Alexander said, watching me closely. Marcus contacted your phone several times this morning. Threatening messages. My blood ran cold. My phone is in my purse in the bedroom. I haven't checked it. I had my security team monitor communications to your devices since the situation developed, he explained, unapologetic about yet another invasion of privacy. The content of the messages concerns me. He's becoming increasingly unhinged. Before I could respond, a knock at the door interrupted us. One of Alexander's security men entered, his expression grave. Sir, we have a situation. Marcus Denton has been spotted near the property perimeter. Alexander's entire demeanor changed in an instant, his face hardening into something dangerous and cold. He issued rapid commands about security protocols and surveillance, then turned to me. Stay here, he ordered, no trace of the gentle man who had kissed my hands moments before. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me. Fear gripped me. Lily is safe, he assured me, already moving toward the door. The house is on lockdown. No one gets in without going through me first. As the door closed behind him, I did as instructed, turning the heavy lock. Through the windows, I saw security personnel moving across the grounds with purpose, communicating via earpieces. The beautiful home had transformed into a fortress. I sank back into the chair, the magnitude of my decision crashing over me like a wave. In the space of 5 days, I had gone from independent single mother to being under the protection and power of a man who operated outside the law, a man who clearly wanted more from me than just my presence in his home. And the most frightening realization of all? Part of me wanted to give it to him. Time crawled by in Alexander's office. Through the windows, I watched security personnel patrolling the grounds, their movements precise and coordinated. Twice I tried calling the suite where Lily was staying, but no one answered, intensifying my anxiety. After 30 agonizing minutes, the office door unlocked. Alexander entered, his expression grim but controlled. Behind him stood 2 of his security men, flanking a third person whose appearance made my blood freeze, Marcus. Thinner than I remembered, his once handsome face haggard and marked by a fresh bruise blooming along his jaw. His hands were secured behind his back, and his eyes, when they found mine, contained equal parts hatred and fear. Emma! He spat, struggling against the men holding him. Still hiding behind others I see. Alexander's hand shot out, gripping Marcus's throat with such sudden violence that I gasped. You speak to her with respect, he said, his voice deadly quiet, or you don't speak at all. Marcus's face reddened as he struggled for breath until Alexander released him with a look of disgust. Leave us, Alexander commanded his men. Wait outside. They exited without question, leaving the 3 of us in a triangle of tension so thick it seemed to distort the air. Sit, Alexander told Marcus, pushing him roughly into a chair before turning to me. His expression softened fractionally. Are you all right? I nodded, unable to form words, my eyes fixed on the man who had once promised to love me forever, who had fathered my child, who had abandoned us both and stolen everything we had. Your ex-husband has quite a story, Alexander continued, leaning against his desk, his posture relaxed but his eyes vigilant. He seems to believe you're hiding assets that rightfully belong to him. Marcus glared at me. The jewelry was my grandmother's, not hers. She took it when I left. Liar, I whispered, finding my voice at last. Those pieces were from my grandmother. You knew that. You were with me when my mother gave them to me after she died. Always the victim, Marcus sneered. Tell that to the men who are going to kill me if I don't deliver what I promised. Alexander observed our exchange with cold interest. Mr. Denton here owes considerable sums to some very unpleasant people even I prefer not to do business with. He moved to stand behind Marcus's chair, his hands resting on the back in a gesture that appeared casual but contained unmistakable menace. He's managed to convince them that your family heirlooms are worth enough to clear his debts. They're not, I said, meeting Marcus's desperate gaze. They're just old pieces with sentimental value. You're lying, Marcus hissed. Your mother told me they were valuable, antiques, worth at least 50,000. I shook my head, genuine confusion joining my fear. That's impossible. My mother barely had enough money for rent most months. If those pieces were valuable, she would have sold them during one of her many financial crises. Something in my tone must have convinced him because Marcus's expression crumbled from anger to despair. "No," he whispered. "No. They have to be worth something. They have to be." "How much do you owe?" Alexander asked, his tone conversational but his eyes hard. Marcus swallowed. 70,000, plus interest. "And who holds this debt?" "The Vega brothers." Alexander's expression darkened further. "Unwise associations, Mr. Denton." The name meant nothing to me, but clearly, it held significance for Alexander. He circled the desk and pressed a button on his phone. "Bring in the box." Moments later, one of his men entered carrying a familiar wooden container. My grandmother's jewelry box. He placed it on the desk and exited without a word. Alexander opened it, revealing the modest collection inside. A gold locket, 2 rings with small stones, a pearl necklace, and a few other pieces. Nothing that looked particularly valuable to my untrained eye. "Is this what you were looking for?" he asked Marcus. Marcus stared at the open box, his expression desperate. "Yes. That's it." Alexander picked up one of the rings, examining it in the light. "Costume jewelry," he said dismissively. "The stones are glass. The metal is gold-plated at best." He set it down and selected another piece. This one might fetch a few $100s from a vintage dealer, nothing more. Marcus made a sound like a wounded animal. "That can't be right. It can't be." "I had an appraiser examine these pieces yesterday," Alexander continued mercilessly. "Total value, approximately $2,000, hardly enough to cover what you owe the Vegas." The revelation hit me with unexpected force. Alexander had not only located my jewelry, but had it professionally appraised, all without my knowledge. The violation should have outraged me. But in that moment, all I felt was a strange relief that the items truly were as worthless as I'd always believed. "You're a dead man," Marcus whispered, all color draining from his face. "And if they don't get their money, they'll come after Emma and Lily too." At the mention of my daughter's name, something in Alexander changed. The controlled businessman vanished, replaced by something dangerous and primal. He moved with startling speed, gripping Marcus's chin and forcing his head up. "Let me be perfectly clear," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, yet somehow filling the room. "Emma and Lily are under my protection now. My name, my roof, my resources. If anyone threatens them, they answer to me." The implications of his words settled over us all. My status in Alexander's household was being publicly declared, not just to Marcus, but to whoever might come looking for him. "The Vegas work for me," Alexander continued, releasing Marcus with a small shove. "Their operation falls under my territory, a fact you would have known if you'd done even minimal research before borrowing from them." Marcus's expression morphed from terror to confusion. "They work for you?" "Indirectly, but yes." Alexander straightened his cuffs, a casual gesture at odds with the tension in the room. "Which means your debt is now mine to resolve." Hope flickered across Marcus's face. "You'll pay it?" Alexander's laugh was short and without humor. "No. But I'm offering you a choice, Mr. Denton. Option 1. I call the Vegas, explain that you attempted to defraud them with worthless collateral, and let them handle you as they see fit." He paused, letting the implication sink in. "Option 2. You disappear. New identity, new location. Far from here. You never contact Emma or Lily again. You forget they exist." "And my debt?" Marcus asked, visibly trembling now. "Considered paid, with interest." Alexander's eyes were cold, in exchange for you vanishing permanently from their lives. I watched this negotiation for my future, for Lily's future, unfold with a surreal sense of detachment. The man I had once loved, who had fathered my child, was being offered a chance to walk away from us forever, and some part of me knew that Alexander's offer wasn't generosity, it was possession. He was removing a competitor, clearing his path to us. "How do I know you'll keep your word?" Marcus asked, his earlier bravado completely gone. "You don't," Alexander replied simply, "but considering your alternatives, I suggest you take the risk." He glanced at his watch. You have 30 seconds to decide. Marcus looked at me, really looked at me for the first time since entering the room. Emma, is this what you want? To stay with him? Do you know what he is? The question cut through my numbness. Did I know what Alexander was? A criminal, certainly. Dangerous, undoubtedly. A man who had invaded my privacy, manipulated circumstances to bring me into his orbit, and was now effectively purchasing my ex-husband's permanent absence. But also, a man who had protected my daughter when no one else could. Who had offered us security after years of struggling alone. Who looked at me with a hunger that made me feel simultaneously valued and vulnerable. I know enough, I said finally. Just take the deal, Marcus. It's better than you deserve. Something like regret flashed across his face. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For everything. For leaving. Tell Lily. Lily believes her father is dead, I interrupted coldly. And that's how it's going to stay. Marcus flinched as if struck, but nodded slowly. I'll take option 2, he told Alexander. Wise choice. Alexander pressed a button on his desk phone. Raymond will handle the arrangements. You'll leave tonight. Within minutes, Marcus was escorted out, a broken man being led to an uncertain future of his own making. As the door closed behind him, the office fell silent, except for the distant sound of waves against the cliffs below. Alexander moved to a cabinet, poured 2 glasses of amber liquid, and brought one to me. Drink, he suggested. It helps. I accepted the glass, taking a small sip that burned all the way down. What happens now? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Now? He sat on the edge of the desk, studying me with those intense eyes. Now you begin your new life here, with me and Marcus. We'll be on a flight to South America tonight. New name, new documentation, enough startup money to establish himself somewhere remote. He'll be warned that any attempt to contact you or return to the country will void our arrangement. Alexander's tone made it clear what that would mean. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt unmoored, caught in a current much stronger than myself. And us? What exactly are we to each other in this new arrangement? Alexander set down his glass and moved to kneel before me, taking my free hand in his. Whatever you want us to be, Emma. I meant what I said before. I won't force anything. You'll have your position here, your own space, your independence. But you want more, I stated, meeting his gaze directly. Yes, he admitted without hesitation. I want you. All of you. But I'm a patient man. I can wait until you're ready. The sincerity in his voice was compelling, as was the gentle way he held my hand. As if I were something precious, rather than something owned. And despite everything, despite all the red flags and warnings, I felt myself leaning toward him, drawn by a force I didn't fully understand. I need time, I said finally, to adjust. For Lily to adjust. He nodded, bringing my hand to his lips in what was becoming a familiar gesture. You have it. All the time you need. A knock at the door interrupted the moment. When Alexander called permission to enter, a staff member appeared with the news that Lily was asking for me. Go to her, Alexander said, releasing my hand. We'll continue this conversation another time. As I rose to leave, he caught my wrist gently. Emma, he said, his voice low and intimate. Welcome home. The words should have terrified me. Instead, they settled over me with an unexpected weight of truth. This was home now. This mansion. This life. This dangerous, compelling man who had inserted himself into our existence with such calculated precision. And as I walked toward my daughter, toward our new reality, I realized that the cage I had feared might also be a sanctuary. Alexander Castillo was a dangerous man, but his danger was now turned outward, protecting rather than threatening us. Time would tell whether I had made a devil's bargain or found an unexpected salvation. But for now, for today, Lily was safe, Marcus was gone, and I had chosen this path with open eyes. Whatever came next, we would face it together. The single mom, the little girl, and the Mafia boss who had claimed them both as his own.